everyone. I'm Rory McGuire. I'm a professor and extension specialist at Virginia Tech, and I am for the soil because the soil is our future. We don't make any more of it. If you eat, you rely on soil.
And away we go with another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Ishee, your host, and Eric Bendfeldt and Mary Sketch Bryant will be joining us in just a few moments, but wanted to take a quick opportunity to remind everyone of the Virginia Farm to Table Conference coming up on December 5th and December the 6th. That will be in the Shenandoah Valley this year at the Blue Ridge Community College. There's a lot of information about it at the website forthesoil.org. You'll learn all about the program, the speakers, how to register. And I wanted to also make sure that everybody knew about a special event taking place on Thursday evening. That evening, we will all gather at the Granary. That's at the Valley Pike Farm Market in Wears Cave, Virginia, and that will be an evening of networking with fellow farmers and gardeners and soil health enthusiasts and direct marketing enthusiasts, and it will also be an evening of music. So bring your guitar, bring your harmonica, bring your banjo, whatever you can play, bring it with you because we're going to have a jam session at the Farm to Table Conference. That'll be on Thursday evening, but this is a 2-day event, Thursday, December the 5th and Friday, December the 6th. All the details can be found at forthesoil.org, and right there at the menu bar, right across the top of the page, you'll see 2024 Virginia Farm to Table Conference. We look forward to seeing you there. Eric, would you introduce our special guest this week?
Yes, Jeff, we're very pleased to have Nate Sloan with us. Nate is the owner and executive chef for Bloom Restaurant and Wine Bar in Roanoke, Virginia, and just really exploring the idea of for the soil to the people, and want to hear more about his perspective as a restaurateur. So welcome, Nate, if you could share about your experience and journey.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here. Really appreciate what you all do for our entire community and honestly the world. So thank you.
Nate, I understand you were raised on a farm in Virginia.
You got it. Yep, born and raised, Franklin County, Virginia, southwestern side, Callaway Ferrum area, right at the foothills of 5 Mile Mountain. Yeah, my parents settled around that area in 78, started growing organic produce. First couple of years, they had some livestock, found it wasn't a good fit for them, but grow uncertified organic since then. Always focused on the land and kind of creating a sanctuary for both flora and fauna. And it was a great experience. I wouldn't change it for the world. Taught me a lot about the importance of food, soil health, and eating well, being well.
And Nate, obviously you stayed involved in food, but it looks a little different now. How did you transition to getting involved in the restaurant world and being a chef?
Yeah, so the transition for me into being a chef wasn't on the surface immediately. Growing up, of course, as a young teen, you don't always appreciate the lessons that you learn on the farm in the sense of getting up early, working late, spending your summers hoeing potatoes or harvesting tomatoes. Those hornworms can be a bit intimidating when you're young. But as you get older, of course, you start to realize the values and the lessons that you learned with that ethic and that dedication and that, honestly, that appreciation for what real food, soil health, and what a healthy planet can look like. So that transition happened when I was out west working in a few restaurants after high school, and then I decided to move to the Northeast. Explore some college curriculum in a couple different fields, and then I found myself working in some French restaurants. And from there, I worked under a couple of really great chefs that really focused on the quality of produce, mostly which was sourced in the New England area, which is quite incredible in what it has available to it as well. And so learning that and seeing that value that translates from the ingredient to the plate was really apparent to me. And it kind of was quite nostalgic and reminded me a lot of my childhood and how those flavors were coming back, and that appreciation of flavor and ingredient quality could really shine through. So upon moving back to the Roanoke area, in the 2010 timeframe. I was helping out on the farm. We were running a vegetable CSA for a local farmers market at that time, and just kind of settled in for a bit, found a great job, ended up being executive chef soon thereafter. And from there, it's the story of what it is now.
And Nate, could you speak a little bit about, how you see the sort of the local and regional food concept as a chef and restaurant owner?
Yeah, local and regional food concept to me is the only concept in terms of sourcing ethically and sustainably and responsibly. I think the value that it adds to the community is exponential, whether it's putting food on other farmers' tables or putting food on our guests' tables. That value just translates and you can taste it. And a lot of folks tell us how much they enjoy our seasonal cocktails and our seasonal small plates and entrees and things of that nature. And I always credit, well, it starts with the ingredients and we just try not to mess it up.
We're talking today with Nate Sloan. He is owner and executive chef at Bloom Restaurant in Roanoke. And Nate, I was reading an article about you in the Roanoker magazine recently, and it talked about probably an event we'd all like to forget, COVID-19. And we can all remember how disruptive COVID-19 was to America and the world, but specifically to the food industry, the local food industry, if you put it in a microscope. So how did COVID-19 impact your operation there in Roanoke?
Yeah, COVID, it's been quite a learning experience for us. We had been open 8 months, so we were quite in our infancy stage as a restaurant, just turned 5 a couple weeks ago. So huge props to the team and crew that's gotten us here to this point and the support that we have from the community that keeps us going. And how it affected us in our restaurant world, I honestly could say from an ingredient and from the standpoint of a chef, we fortunately were not that affected because we source so much local food. Our prices were pretty static. They didn't skyrocket. Our produce wasn't coming from California that had to get shipped by truckers that were getting paid overtime or whatever the circumstances were in play at that time with larger corporations and the food chain there. We did not see as much. Of course, our latex gloves were non-existent. Toilet paper was quite a scarcity at the time. But we could get great carrots, we could get great produce, lettuce, and we feel blessed. And it was a great learning experience for us to see how not only eating local can create a better environment for our entire community in terms of health, but it can also just be it is a more sustainable model for in situations such as pandemics and things of natural disasters and moments where we have to seek shelter from our friends and neighbors.
Before we started recording the podcast, Nate, you were talking about your restaurant and how you would not exactly describe it as a farm-to-table restaurant, but you do try to source locally high-quality ingredients when you can and if you can. So give us an example. Let's say you want locally sourced pork or chicken or beef or romaine lettuce. So take us through that process. How do you find that locally?
Yeah. So fortunately, being in the local food scene for over 15 years now has really assisted me in kind of creating those networks and relationships. And so now it's calling up old friends, working regularly with our producers and meeting new farmers that can find us and reach out to us to kind of start new relationships, which is always a treat to see new faces and meet new folks. And, in the old days, it was you call someone up, might catch them, might leave a voicemail on the landline. But nowadays, it's a lot of email. It's a lot of online ordering platforms that they've all really put a lot of work into getting it so other chefs can have a more streamlined process. So these farmers have really put a lot of effort into creating systems that they can market their produce, be it direct to consumer with the farmers markets or be it direct to chefs with collaboratives and co-op like Blue Ridge Farmer or Flower Exchange and Locomotive and Leap and 4P. There's a lot of programs out there that allow us as chefs to find what we need locally as long as we're looking for it.
And Nate, you just mentioned a lot of partners who are working in that space and that make it possible for a restaurant, for producers to work within that context. You know, Roanoke seems to have a pretty strong, I guess you'd say, local food shed. Do you see that, and kind of what makes that work, and what role do you see the consumers and the folks visiting your restaurant playing in that?
Yeah, I think we are very fortunate to have the food shed that we do in this area. Our abundance of produce, specifically from May until about November these days, is incredible. We change multiple menu items and cocktails every week pretty much. So we don't flip the menu, but it's constantly evolving and it's constantly changing with what we have available and what farmers might have an abundance of. And so I think, how can that translate to the guest and the quote unquote consumer and the public? I would say is choosing to support local, getting up Saturday morning, getting out to that farmer's market, buying direct from the farmer, meeting that farmer, maybe taking farm tours, participating in agricultural activities that can kind of incentivize our community further with more opportunities that we have to kind of create a more sustainable food shed.
And Nate, we've also, with the podcast, we've been emphasizing how important soil health is locally as well as globally. And I know on your menu, you have something called a trip for the table. If you could speak a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, so it is a great meal that we offer seasonally and kind of quarterly. And what we do there is we take local produce and we incorporate worldly flavors. So for instance, this past January, we did a West African menu, followed by a Polynesian menu. And so that allows us to kind of be creative and take local ingredients, but put a new spin on it. And so you can see a sweet potato dusted in a togarashi sashimi pepper, or you could see a traditional British pie with local grass-fed beef. And so it allows us to kind of really push the boundaries in those times, so especially in the doldrums of winter when we're all looking for a little something other than braised greens and roasted rutabaga. So it's pretty exciting for us and for our guests.
Once again, we're talking today with Nate Sloan. He's the owner and executive chef at Bloom Restaurant in Roanoke. I understand you probably have a website.
We do, yes, sir. It's bloomrke.com. So BLOOM. R as in Roger, K as in Kevin, E as in Eric.com.
All right, very well. And final question from me, and it's about the farmer making the connection with you. I think there are a lot of farmers probably listening to this podcast saying, boy, I wish I had a nice white tablecloth restaurant that wanted what I grow. So talk a little bit to the farmers about how they can make this link.
Yeah, so I think that's all up to the farmer and what they're looking to, what kind of connection they're looking to build. We have a lot of farms that prefer to sell direct to us because they don't necessarily want that networking element of having that middle person to coordinate the deliveries and the ordering. And then we have a lot of farmers that opt to just focus on growing the food and getting it harvested and getting it cleaned and getting it in a box and getting it where it needs to be. And so that's the first question I think you ask yourself is what kind of operation, or better yet, first question is, what do I want to grow? What can I grow well? Second question is, how do I want to market it and to what extent? And then the third question is what's my 5-year plan of which direction do I want to take it? Do I want to continue to focus on perennial or seasonal vegetables, or would I rather grow a perennial fruit business that might be better for me in the long run? Be it you-pick operations or direct to chef kind of high-end commodity products that we're all always looking for. So I think there's a lot of questions that exist within that same question, but I think it all depends on what works for the farmer and their farm. And I think it's important to focus on what grows well and what you like growing, because sure, we all love heirloom tomatoes, but they're a lot of work. They can split. They're fickle. If it rains, they pop. If it's, you got to irrigate them. So there's a lot of things that go into farming that a lot of people don't understand. But I think as a farmer, you got to figure out what works best for you.
And last question from me, Nate, is we always like to ask guests kind of either a resource or a person who inspired you. And I guess, I'd specifically be interested with you working really at that intersection of land stewardship on the production side, but then community viability and the whole food chain, kind of, where have you found your inspiration, or what resource do you like to turn to?
I would say my biggest inspiration for local food and my passion for sustainable agriculture would come from my parents, for sure. I couldn't replace that experience that I had growing up on that farm. And I always turn to them with questions, whether it's companion planting or whether it's what do we feel like growing this on our farm, and just general questions of life. So.
Well said. Thank you very much, Nate, for everything that you do to encourage healthy foods and healthy soils and local agriculture. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank y'all for having me. Really appreciate it.
Nate Sloan, owner and executive chef of Bloom Restaurant in Roanoke. Dr. Bendfeldt, Mary, we'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you so much.
For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. If you have a specific question about soil health, call your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or perhaps a soil and water conservation district office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of the Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.